My name is John, and a little bit about me. I am actually a gap year consultant here with EF Gap Year. I may or may not have been the one to actually invite you to tonight's session. Today, we are joined by two amazing parents, Kelley and Jennifer, whose students went on gap programs with us. This panel is going to be Q&A style, all about obviously the gap year experience from the pre-departure process all the way until returning back home and onward. We're in a critical time right now as people are going through their college acceptances and college application process as well. So we're in a great spot to learn a little bit more about how to go about that. A little bit more about me. I actually did this program myself in 2018. I went on a gap semester program. So obviously going to be excited to talk a little bit more about my experience. I'm also a board member on the Gap Year Association, which provides the official standards and accreditation of all different gap year organizations and providers as well. So with that said, we're joined by Kelley and Jennifer. I would love to just start with a quick introduction from both of you. We're going to start with a little bit of some context on all the gap year programs, and then we're going to move into the actual panel. But just to sort of do a teaser, Kelley, maybe can you start with giving a quick introduction on yourself and the program Wes completed?
Yes, I'm Wes started last year, 2023. Is that right? 23, 24, 24, 25. And he's my fourth child. He came to us in September and said, I want to take a gap year. I'm going to backpack across Europe. And I said, no, I don't think you are. But he came back with this great proposal from EF, and we were sold. And he has enjoyed it immensely. He's still in the program, applying to colleges. He's learned 2 different languages, and he's thriving. I think he actually went back to work and did some part-time with EF Gap Year as a parent. It's been an incredible process. We've met his cohort, his instructors, his host families. We went and visited him in Barcelona and Sevilla and his internship back in Munich, and he has grown immensely. I could not have paid for this in college for him to do where he is now. He is now applying to colleges in Europe as well as in the States, and knows who he wants to be and has a better global perspective than any of my other children have ever had. He wants to make a difference. It has changed him immensely. So we're thrilled.
Love that, Kelley, and can't wait to actually dive a little bit deeper into all those pieces and components that you mentioned there. And then Jennifer, can you also give a quick introduction on yourself and the program Jardin completed as well?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Jennifer, and I'm from California. I see some Northern California people here. That's where I am as well, way up in the very rural coastal area. So the reason I include that is we're so rural, we don't have a lot of higher education opportunities here. And when our daughter Jardin, she graduated last June, and looking at what's next for her, she didn't have a love of anything yet. She hadn't yet discovered what her passion was. So I actually found the gap year program. I did a lot of research. I for myself, travel was instrumental in who I became as a person. And I just knowing her spirit thought this could be something really good. And when I found EF, it was exactly what we were looking for. And I'm excited tonight to go a little deeper into that, into our journey. But just to touch on, as Kelley did, Jardin came back, she did a semester program. And since she came back, she has a lot more confidence, a lot more exposure. Her worldview before was like this, and now it's like this. She's also applying to universities in Europe, which I don't think she even thought was something she could do before. She didn't even know that was a pathway that was open to Americans, studying abroad. Just everything about her, it's quite that image of the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. She found her wings and is so inspired now to live a big and fulfilling and impactful life. And she didn't have that sense of self prior to the program. So absolutely life-changing for her.
That's incredible. I love that analogy you made there on the kind of before and after of her experience. Again, super excited to dive a little bit deeper into that. Just to give everyone else who's here the context on what these programs are, I want to start with a bit of an introduction on EF and who we are as an organization. So in this time, feel free to go off camera or off mute and just sit back and relax while I just give a little bit of context on these programs here. So to begin, EF stands for Education First. That's the first question I always get. People are curious to learn more about. And EF is the world leader in educational travel. We actually just celebrated our 60th anniversary a few days ago. And in that time, we've literally sent millions of people all around the world learning new places, seeing new cultures, and discovering new things about themselves. You may or may not have heard of us through our EF educational tours. That's the largest provider of its kind, where we send hundreds of thousands of middle school and high school students all around the world. So maybe if you had a friend who did an 8th grade field trip to DC, more than likely that was with us, or a spring break trip with their high school to Barcelona. Again, that was probably us. Now that you see EF and know the logo, you'll probably see our backpacks all over the world. I am one of 52,000 staff members. We have over 600 offices in 114 countries and 1 million different travelers and learners every single year. And we're actually made up of 17 different divisions actually comprise EF. We're here right now at the intersection of our EF gap year programs that really hone in on specific travel opportunities for 18 to 22-year-old high school, or rather college age students. And I want to dig a little bit deeper on that profile of the type of student that does our program. Like I said, I myself did this program. I grew up in New York City with a certain perspective and mind view on the world. What was really great about this program is that all of the GAP programs are open to any U.S. student between the ages of 18 to 22. And what's really exciting about that there are students for all different reasons who gravitate to these programs. But what I find really interesting and unique is that there's a certain common thread that binds all of the reasonings and interests for our programs. And as an alum myself, there was no better group dynamic. Now, it was a part of all sorts of different clubs and extracurriculars and athletic organizations in high school. This by far was the greatest group dynamic in terms of the mix up of people that I was on my program with. I still actively do reunion opportunities with the alumni. There's a very strong alumni community, which I'm sure our parents will touch on as well in this conversation. Now, I want to start with a quick overview of the two different lengths of program options. We start with the semester programs that are like an academic semester. We also have the full gap year program, which is like an academic year. The fall semester, winter break in between, and then a spring semester as well. And again, this is going to be an abridged version of all the content about our programs. What I will say, and you'll hear me say this again, for super detailed logistical information about any points and parts of this conversation here, definitely defer to your EF gap year consultant who has either invited you here tonight or will be following up with you immediately after this webinar tomorrow as well. They help with the enrollment and can provide expert insight into what these logistics look like. And I also just want you to keep in mind for the pieces that are included in all these programs, you can see here some of the basic components. And again, these details can be sorted out with your gap year consultant as well. But one piece I actually just want to highlight before I go a little bit deeper is an overview of the program support system. At the very basic component, you're going to have your cohort of fellow travelers. This is around 20 to 25 different students. There are multiple cohorts per program. You're going to be most intimate with your own immediate cohort. Within that cohort of 20 to 25, you're also going to have your EF tour director, who is effectively like the main person in charge, handling the operational logistics of the program. Also are the local expert in the languages and the places that we're traveling to. You're also going to have your student life coordinators, which is like the second aspect of on-program support. You can think of them almost like the role of an RA in a college dorm, if you're familiar with how they operate. Someone to almost act as a mentor, support person. Both of those individuals, the tour director and the student life coordinator, are there with the students, with the cohort 24/7. They actually stay in the exact same accommodations as the students, different rooms, obviously, and are there literally on at any moment's notice. And the fourth aspect is also your EF gap year program advisor. Every student is paired with a dedicated program advisor for each program, who again acts as someone who checks in with the students, and handles all of the very detailed and comprehensive pre-departure support and orientation before the students even depart on program. I'm going to share with you a quick overview of the GAP semester programs. You can see here the 3 separate itineraries of the GAP semester programs. One association I would like to make is when you hear me use the word GAP, you can almost make an association of the words dynamic. You can see some of the overviews of the itinerary here in each one of the cities and countries that the students could potentially be traveling on in each one of the GAP programs. Now, I also will mention our study abroad semester programs. And when I say the word study abroad, I want you to associate the word maybe stable with that, because it's actually you get to choose one city, one country for the duration of the semester, focusing on some of the high-level themes that you see written here as well. And again, more information is found on our website on the itineraries and deeper dives into the coursework and things for our study abroad programs. And again, if you want to hear more of what's best fit for your student, I would defer to setting up a time with your gap year consultant. And finally, the full EF gap year program, which is actually our most popular option, is divided into 2 semesters. Like I said, the first semester, the fall semester, starts off very dynamic. You can see you actually start with 6 countries across Europe. The students are traveling through. Each week they're in a new country for those first 6 weeks. Immediately after those first 6 weeks of that European cultural immersion, they spend 3 weeks in Australia, again, engaging with a series of relevant cultural and industrial themes within that. And then they follow the 3 weeks in Australia with 3 weeks of a cultural immersion in Thailand. So again, in each one of the countries and cities and places that you're exploring in the first semester, we're going to be diving deep into some of the top industries and themes each one of those cultures and histories are known for. Now, after that first semester, students get sent home for a winter break. Then in semester 2, we fly them back out where they actually have a little bit more creativity with how they want to set up their second semester. They can choose to either do an international internship based in Stockholm, Sweden, which is actually where EF was founded, or they can choose to do an immersive language learning semester in either one of those locations that you can see here. And again, I speed ran through all of those overviews and the itineraries. Again, our website has more information. Your gap year consultant has the expert information on how it's going to apply in terms of the financial details and the enrollment criteria as well per program. With that said, I hope everyone was able to follow that introduction there. If you two can come back, oh, here we are on off mute on screen here. I want to dive. I want to maybe rewind time a little bit. We started with introductions on both of you, but just to make sure we're all on the same page here, we're going to internally rewind the clock and go back to maybe the shoes of all of the prospective students and families here in the audience tonight. Kelley, maybe I'll start with you. Can you go back in time and tell me a little bit more of like where Wes was when he was starting to contemplate this gap year program? Like, why did this come to mind for him?
For Wes, he's a 4th, so he's already been to all the college visits. He's a junior. He'd finished his junior year. We've gone through visiting at 3 or 4 different colleges. We had taken a family vacation actually in Scotland, walked across Scotland, and that is when he came to me and said, maybe this is not what I want to do. Maybe I do not want to go. He has great grades. He's been accepted at some place. I mean, things are looking like he's just going to continue down the path. And he said, I don't know if this is right for me. I don't know what I want to study. I don't know who I need to be. I don't know where I want to go. I might need a break. And that's when I said, okay, let's just talk about it. And then he came back. That was at dinner. The next day at breakfast, he had an entire plan laid out with your website. This is what I would like to do. This is what I think I can grow from. This is, he did the whole plan and the nonprofit work and then going into the internship. And for me as a parent, I was like, I want to do that. Are you kidding me? I don't want, I would not want to go to college. I would much rather do this. And then he did, of course, going back and forth with costs of college, not knowing what he wants to do, and then with the benefits of EF. So for us, he definitely drove the process. He did all the communication. And then he would come back and talk to us about it. He went back to school. He was around his friends, talked about it with his friends, but he had already made up his mind and what he wanted to do. He already had he already knew he wanted to learn Spanish. He wanted to be prolific in it. He wanted to do the nonprofits. Wasn't sure he ever wanted to go to college. Did an internship in Sevilla and said, oh no, I do want to go to college now. So I kind of jumped ahead in that process a little bit, but it was definitely him coming to us. It was a easy decision, but he did drive it for sure.
That's great to hear. And I think it's interesting just hearing the comparisons. Jennifer, can you also touch on that as well in terms of the initial, inquiry into, this gap year program?
Yeah, and I love this because it's actually the other end of the spectrum from what Kelley shared. So I know we have parents here all over that spectrum, but for us, our daughter Jardin wasn't clear on what she wanted to do next. And the logical next step is university or college. And for her and for our family, that didn't feel solid to me. She was so just unsure about who she was and what was next. And I didn't want to take out a massive loan for something that I wasn't sure she was going to be comfortable in, want to complete, get a little down that road and then pivot. It just didn't feel right for her. And so I started investigating what other options there were for her. As I stated in the introduction, knowing that a program like this can help someone discover their interests. One of the things I've always told her, especially as she was approaching adulthood, because she didn't have her thing yet. She hadn't discovered her thing. She hadn't discovered what she's passionate about or what inspires her. And I would always add the word yet. I would say, it's not that it's not there for you. You just maybe have never been exposed to it yet. And by having this broader experience, perhaps that would allow you to find that thing that inspires you. So that's really where we came to it. So I was more of the driving force, unlike Wes, who had his whole presentation to your family, Kelley. So my daughter loved the idea, and that's when I did a lot of the deep diving and, checking out the program, vetting it out, doing all the research and so forth. She, of course, loved the idea of going to Europe for a semester. So it sort of grew from there. Her excitement grew initially just at this wondrous opportunity to explore so much. And then that came and became more narrowed into what would that really look like for her beyond the excitement of seeing these amazing cities and so forth. What is the educational aspect, and what is she truly going to gain and take away besides some exciting day trips and a whole lot of pictures? So we started going deeper into how this would be more impactful and meaningful in shaping what her academic career and then vocation would be coming out of it. So we came to it from the opposite end, but it sounds like the end result's really similar.
I had a similar slice of both of your pies in the sense where I actually was introduced to this by my mom, but was met with some pretty stark opposition from my father. And so that was an interesting dynamic to play in terms of having, my mom, who was really supportive in just the conversations with myself, my dad a little skeptical, because there also is like a stigma around gap years.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of people, you think of a gap year and you think of your student staying in mom's basement for the year playing video games all night. And I think once my father learned a little bit more about the intentionality of these programs and those educational components, that was obviously the kind of the what made it a little bit easier. But in terms of that stigma, maybe Jennifer, we can start with you then and go to Kelley. In terms of like what you thought of when you heard gap year, what was your perception around what a gap year looked like?
Yeah, well, and I want to touch on something too, because I'm sure there are families and couples, on this that may have different points of view about what this really is. So I just real quickly want to say my husband, Jardin's father, was not in alignment with this vision at all, not in alignment with what even is that? What do you get out of it? Do you get a degree when you finish? Do you get credits? All of these obvious questions that I'm sure a lot of families have. And then, of course, the investment and so forth. So we'll go through that more as we go forward chronologically, but I want to not forget that because it was a huge piece of our story and Jardine's experience. Circling back to your question, that stigma around a gap year for our family, for us, really, it felt like sending someone somewhere that they just weren't yet ready for didn't make sense. And so there is a different kind of a gap where people can get lost. They can get lost when they don't have direction. And so this type of a gap, my feeling about it was it provided inspiration and structure to help lead them through that gauntlet from, childhood to adulthood. So that's how I viewed it, but we definitely encountered a lot of other people's opinions around what that stigma could be. And I will say, Jardine, now having come back from Europe, come back from the program, has blown people's minds about, oh, that's what a gap year is. Oh, that's what your gap experience was. And so it's helping to break the myths and the, kind of negative stereotyping with kids taking a year off.
Yeah, I love the way that you worded that. And I think that's also very illuminating for a lot of people when they hear a little more about these programs and what it looks like. Kelley, we'd love to hear your perception of that as well in terms of the initial feedback on when Wes presented you with a gap year. What was your reaction to that?
We were very much open to it, but we, at first we're thinking we don't want him backpacking across, Europe. We want it to be structured. We want him to have some goals. We want him to have a mind. We just don't want him floating somewhere. And EF came in with that, and he had structure. He had lots and lots of support along the way as well. I totally agree that it helped him find himself. He was very adaptive during these experiences as well. Just going into a city and learning how to get on the tube, or it just manipulating those areas that he's never been around, the different cultures, the different languages. It was an eye-opening experience for him, and he's the one that did all the work. We were definitely supportive with it, but he actually did the work. And it was definitely for the best for him. He has become a better person from it. The nonprofit aspect of it and he realized the global initiative, but behind most of those nonprofits and why he should be there, and opened his eyes from it wasn't just this little area in Texas that he was part of. I mean, it was a huge world out there that's very small. So for him, the gap year was not what we thought it was going to be, backpacking, and it was definitely an education on its own for him.
Love the way you worded that. And then now maybe kind of going a little bit forward in time now, we made the decision. We said yes to the gap year. Kelley, maybe we'll stick with you, and then we'll bump to Jennifer afterwards. What were Wes's initial feelings as he was, itching closer to that first day, and maybe also like his first couple days on programs? What's his social style like? How did you see him? What did he have nerves? Like what was that beginning process like for him as he was?
He didn't. He was excited. He's definitely my adventure child. He was very excited, ready to meet everybody, ready to listen to everybody's story. He went in with it with his arms wide open. He realized there was people from all walks of life, from all different backgrounds, and he wanted to know their story and wanted to be with them. So he was different. He's also a boy. I mean, he's just, I don't know. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed the process and embraced it. Definitely.
Love to hear that. Jennifer, we'd love to hear your perspective on that as well, in terms of those first couple of days leading up to the program, and then maybe the first week or so on Jardine's, feelings and, emotions towards the program.
Yeah, well, we signed up before she graduated high school, so she was still in high school. Something that helped a lot. She's outgoing and adventurous, but this is a massive, undertaking to take this step alone. And some of the things that helped her a lot is that the cohorts meet up before the trip and get together in these Zoom meetings and get to meet each other. So that was really terrific because she already sort of knew people. They had at least communicated and met each other on camera. So she felt a little more comfortable that way. There were definitely nerves. Little things along the way would oscillate between extreme excitement to a little bit of panic, you know. And I think to younger people, a semester, you know, can seem like a really long time. And so there was a little bit of intangible, unfounded uneasiness, just the unknown, just all of the unknowns. But that was always met with support while she was still on the ground here with her EF support system, which again was so organized so well. The communication was so great. Anytime there were questions from her or from us, it was answered right away. It was clarified. So, you know, all of that helped those jitters to be quelled a little bit. Of course, the day of leaving, more excitement than can be contained, and jitters, and all of these opposing emotions all happening at once was definitely there for our daughter.
I think that's also almost inevitable in terms of, I mean, this could be me just projecting my own insecurities out there, but I feel like no one really loves the first day of school or the first day of work or the first day of anything, right? When you have to put yourself out there and you're pretty vulnerable because you don't know how other people are going to, you know, respond to you. And, you know, I was someone, maybe offer some comparison or you know, in terms of the days leading up, I probably wasn't the most extroverted student, you know, kind of going in there, and we had those pre-departure Zoom meetings and orientations. I was kind of the more quieter kid where I wasn't super engaged during that. But what was so helpful was on those first couple of days, because you're spending, you know, so much time with these people, and also because EF has done this so many times in the past, they kind of know how students are and how they operate and how to, you know, facilitate those, you know, orientation events. So literally after, you know, the first 48 hours, I feel like I had known these people my entire life just because of like how well that, you know, initial piece was. And something I also want to touch on, just because, you know, Kelley, you've made a point on this is a big undertaking, and I definitely agree with that. Also because I was someone who didn't really have, you know, many people in my own social sphere or familial sphere do a gap year before. So this was kind of uncharted territory, like a new frontier almost for me to do something like this. We've met with some different opinions, you know, amongst my peers and family. Maybe Kelley, can you speak on that a little bit on like what was it like when Jardin announced she was doing this Pathfinder program to her family and friends? Like, what was their reaction like?
When she announced it,
Yes.
in our small community, there was a lot of, unfortunately, you know, among her peers in high school, sort of, yeah, right, because it seemed a very big jump, a very big leap from this life to that life. A lot of excitement, but a lot of maybe cynicism, you know, that this would actually come to fruition. A lot of that stigma coming back again, right? Well, what is that anyway? Is that legitimate? We got a lot of those kinds of questions. But ultimately, you know, she felt so grounded in this decision and so in alignment with the program that her excitement became contagious to other people. And as it started looking more real, not just as something she said she was going to do, but something that was actually unfolding and happening, it inspired a lot of our community to say, well, what is that program? And now that she's come back, I have parents all over. We still have a child in high school and saying, what was it that Jardin did? That's amazing. I didn't even know things like that were possible. So it's having a ripple effect in people seeing there are other pathways forward for kids who are just not totally clear on what's next.
And Kelley, we'd be curious to hear like Wes's version of that as well. Like, did he know other people doing a gap year? What was his like friends and family, you know, feedback and reaction to when he announced he was doing something like this?
He was at a traditional high school, so there wasn't anybody else that was doing a gap year at all. They were like, "Oh yeah, you're just gonna go, just take off for a year." And you know, for him, he was met with the same conversations, I think, that Jardine did. You know, that, you know, really you're going to take a year off, and then he'd show them the program, and then they were excited for him. And then when he came back and talked to him, and because he did a year, and he's back there now just doing the the language program of it while he waits to hear back from colleges. And when he came back at Christmas, everybody's like, "What have you done?" And then he went through his an entire, "What have I not done? What and what I've learned, and these are the people that I've met, and these are the nonprofits I've worked with." And they were like, "Wow, why didn't we do this?" Because now we're in college, and we're not. I mean, we're just going, sitting in class and taking tests and going to fraternity parties. So that it was, it was a win-win for, it was rough in the very beginning, I think, as saying, this is what I'm going to do. But in the end, it really, it was a gift.
And I think, Kelley, to that point, like making any decision that feels against the grain, you're going to feel some friction just because it's not
For
completely
sure.
smooth. And I think that was interesting. Within my own perception as well, going on that program, and maybe this kind of ties a little bit nicely, maybe moving a little bit more forward chronologically in terms of those moments when Wes and Jardin both, like you saw within them that, like, yes, this was worth it. Like they're in a good spot. Are there like highlights from the year, from the program, that you can like maybe share, that you saw some like transformation that would be cool to share with the audience? Maybe Kelley, we can start with you, then go to Jennifer.
I think for Wes, was we went and visited him in Barcelona at his family, and he took us to the school, and we met his cohort, and we met some of his teachers. And he was so, I mean, first of all, he was speaking fluently in Spanish. He knew the culture, took us throughout the entire city. He was excited about it. He was finally doing what he wanted to do, learning with all of his friends, with his family, from the teachers. And then when he went to Thailand and started working with the nonprofits, that changed his life, really. And also his guides. He loved every single guide he had a connection with them, and then actually followed where that nonprofit was from and where the money generated from. And all of a sudden he was feeling a little bit, he wasn't thinking in a small realm, he was looking globally on his impact. Well, this nonprofit I'm working in now, this is where what it's doing, and this is where it's going. So for him, that first semester, those were the two. His internship in Sevilla was probably the biggest change in his entire life. He went in to work in an English school doing their marketing. He's never done any marketing in his entire life. And he started doing marketing with another girl, loved it, and then started talking to the owner and said, "I might like to teach." And she said, "Well, you can get certified." So he got certified, and then he started teaching children and adults how to speak Spanish. And he's like, "That's what I want to do." And then he's like, "But I can't not have a degree if I need to get a degree from college now to do what I want to do." And it just was a complete snowball at that point in time. And then he started talking about going to college and started applying. And the colleges that he was looking at his senior year completely changed to the colleges he's looking at now. And those three areas, I think, were his point. And also that one last meeting in London, when you go over your entire year and you kind of bring it all together, that has always stayed with him.
That reflection piece, I think, is such a big component of it as well, to like look back on your year and say, what did I accomplish? What did I do? This is pretty incredible. And
for sure.
Jennifer, would love to hear your take on that as well, in terms of like highlights, those, maybe those moments where she kind of, blossomed out of the cocoon a little bit, to that reference you made earlier. Like when did you see that come to fruition?
Yeah, there were so many highlights, and I can look at sort of obvious ones, like the glossy moments, and then also some just really deep personal transformations. I do want to share her most magical moment on this. So she was only 17 when the trip started, and her birthday was right after. So she was the youngest kid on the tour, and they went to on her 18th birthday, the morning of her 18th birthday. Her name is Jardin, so they're in France. They landed in Paris, and on her 18th birthday, she wakes up in Paris with the Eiffel Tower. They go to Monet's garden and do an art class in Monet's garden. And, it was just the most magical 18th birthday ever. And it wasn't planned that way. It just happened. So that's one of our really fun sort of highlights in that way. But some of the highlighting moments, her self-confidence. One of the things in the program that I know they do at every city is the cohort arrives in a new city, and the very first thing they do is a walking tour. and get everybody very, very oriented with the local public transportation, local money, local, how do you get around? And that was very empowering because it can be stressful to travel for sure. And I love that component. So one of the highlights is just seeing her be someone that knows she can do anything. She can go anywhere. She has no trouble. She doesn't get stressed out about travel anymore, obviously, after, this big trip, but the sense of empowerment and the sense of who she is now versus who she was, she knows there's a way. She views the world, although it's a little bit of a paradox. Of course, the world is huge and she knows the world is huge, but she also knows it's not really that big. And there aren't these enormous barriers that people think they are. If you want to do it, you can do it, whatever it is. So that was a big shift in her mindset. The relationships that she made that have continued now that she's been back home for a few months have been really big, because in a small rural community where she didn't really fit in, she always felt like an outsider and, those kind of normal teenage things, but I think more so in a very tiny rural community. So she found her community, and that was massive for her, people she would not have met otherwise. That was a big deal in helping her to feel more whole and just more okay with who she is innately, rather than trying to be someone. She's now comfortable being herself. So that, as a mother, I don't know that it gets any better than that, knowing that your children are happy and fulfilled and whole. I mean, that was really big. Some other big things, just like Kelley had said, Jardin started with really, I don't want to use this word, but it's the right one, sort of academically lost, not sure which direction she wanted to go. And she came away with a much more clear vision of what she would like to pursue. And again, her college applications, the schools she was applying to, looked completely different when she came back than when she went. And her criteria was different. Her standards were different. What she was looking for is different, because she has a better sense of self rather than an ideal of what life should look like. She's now on a path of what I want my life to feel like. She also came back knowing, yes, I need a degree. And before leaving, sort of, I don't know if I need a degree. So, all of these core values that she didn't yet know became illuminated in her, and now part of who she is and how she approaches things.
And I think that just speaks volumes to like just what you can find with, within this type of experience and program, and where, me too, whichever life stage you are. And, I remember you mentioned the cohort dynamic. I mentioned earlier, grew up in New York City. I ended up becoming, incredible friends with this girl who actually grew up on a barn in Montana who had pet raccoons. I mean, in New York, if there's a raccoon, that's not something you're going to, befriend. And so just the fact that we both were able to, get so close and connected, I think just speaks volumes to the type of people who are doing a program like this, and, why they want to do it, I think is like pretty great to hear. And we kind of talking through some like the highlights and the transformative moments, but with anything in life, we all know this, that's also met sometimes with some challenges or adversity. And I say that because I remember, maybe within the first couple of weeks of the program, when that kind of like honeymoon phase started wearing off a little bit, I was met with some like, real emotions that I had to consider. And I'm saying this because I actually remember FaceTiming my mom, and I was like shaving my face in the mirror, and she just said, "Oh, how you doing, sweetie?" And right when she said that, for some reason, it like struck something in me, and I said, "Mom, I think I need to call you back right now." And I had to hang up and just kind of go through my emotions there. And again, maybe I'm just a sappy, potentially homesick individual, but would love to hear, maybe Jennifer, we could start with you and move to Kelley, in terms of like, what were some of the moments that you saw like Kelley had to, face that, Jardine had to face that adversity.
Had to face adversity and stuff. Yeah, there were a few times, as a freshly turned 18-year-old girl. I will say to parents, when you sign up, they'll recommend getting the international phone plan. Definitely do that. My daughter and I are really close, and we continue to talk frequently on the cell phone. So that was really terrific, because she did have some times, it's a lot of intensity. It's a group of people. It's loud, it's busy, you don't get a lot of alone time. And that was a little bit of a challenge for her, not throughout the program, but just occasionally, just sort of, I really want to connect. I want to connect with my mom or her friends or whatever. So that was just a little different. Maybe the homesickness was in there a little bit. She didn't have too much of that. You know, the program, the Pathfinder at least, is busy, busy, busy. You are busy bees on that. You're walking and going and doing all the time. But there was a little bit of that. She got sick twice. All the kids, you know, everybody got sick. So that was something to navigate for sure. The not feeling well and then being quite ill and having to navigate healthcare in a foreign country. That was definitely a big opportunity for growth. And both times, once was in Barcelona and once was in Switzerland for her. And, you know, she came away from that actually really praising the European models of healthcare and so forth. So it gave her some good contrast too with global dynamics in different industries and regulations and so forth. But mostly, partly because of, well, largely due to the support of her RA staff, the advisors on the ground there. She, you know, all the participants at times needed to reach out to a friend or to someone just because it's a long time away from familiar things. And every time something came up, it was handled, and it was handled well, whether just by my daughter or by the support that was available to her or her ability to reach out to home. But, you know, what we took away from that is I feel like she grew through this program, through the adverse and the wonderful situations, in ways that you couldn't possibly have done in a different environment, right? In a very safe, sort of familiar environment. You just don't get that opportunity for growth. So that's how we handled some of that.
Appreciate that, Jennifer. Yeah, I think that's
great.
Yeah, really cool. Thing to note on Jardine, and just kind of how she handled that. And Kelley, would be curious to hear your take on that with Wes as well, in terms of just moments that you saw him really kind of lean into himself and those support systems that are important. Anything you would note on for that?
Well, and I think you touched on it quite a bit, was that the people that are on the ground, the teachers and the guides and your support staff really help the kids when they have transportation problems. You know, it could be something very small with your just getting a subway set is not working, not inoperable. You can reach out to him. You can't get on a plane because you've been delayed. I think for Wes, he lived with a family in Barcelona, so he couldn't cook in that family. And at that time, he was a vegetarian. So just communicating and actually, and they had two-year-olds. So he moved into an immediate family, which he was part of. And it's kind of, just working on the dynamics. He couldn't cook in the kitchen. So you're kind of working around and having a support staff to help you. Like, these are your other options. This is what you can do. These are the things that you can bring into the home without cooking. I mean, little bitty things like that. But he really had such a great year that if I look back on any kind of issues that he ever had, they were very, very small. He wasn't sick, thank goodness, ever. So we didn't have to go through that. It was just mainly transportation, where he just needed a little advice from the cohort or from his teachers whatsoever. But you have a great staff on in each country that can help you with that.
What I think is interesting is also understanding like when to know you need help and how to like call that out, in terms of if it's with your family and you maybe just need a phone call from your mom, or maybe it's with your friends and just touching up on life things, or maybe it's with the student life coordinator, the on-program advisor, whoever it is. Just knowing how to ask for help, I think, is a pretty big part of the piece as well. All right, just because I want to be respectful of time, maybe we'll move a little bit forward in regards to maybe like the final days of the program. And both Wes and Jardine's experiences, kind of making the transition from how am I going to apply what I just experienced and learned on the program and take that with my next steps, whatever that may be. If it's school, insert whatever plan step 2 is after the GAP program. Kelley, maybe we can start with you, and then we can move on to Jennifer on that.
Well, and for Wes, he came home in May. of 2024, and he hit the ground running. I'm applying for colleges. This is what I want to study. This is what I want to do. However, I'm probably not going to get until 2025 because of the whole year and getting to colleges. And he immediately started making plans to try to get back with EF to go learn another language. And so that is what he did. He got a job this summer. He got all of his college applications in, and then came back to us and said, I want to go to Munich. I want to study another language. I want to work for EF. And that's exactly what he's been doing. He'll come back. Then he came back in the fall. And he said, no, I'm going to go back again. Is it okay? So he's back in Germany again, and he will be completely fluent when he graduates. And now he's applying to schools in Europe that he didn't even have on his pay. I mean, he didn't even have a thought about it until he went back. But he definitely, he came out of it and immediately knew what he wanted to do.
That's incredible. And Jennifer, would love to hear your take on that with Jardine as well, in terms of last days of program and how she was going to apply that to her next steps in life.
Yeah, she wanted to hit the ground running. She definitely wants to do more with EF on many levels. She wants to do more programs because, again, it was so impactful. As I said, she's applying to different schools. EF partnered with Southern New Hampshire University during the Pathfinder program so they could also get college credits. So she did that, and coming back, she arrived back home the day before Thanksgiving, and that holiday time is always very weird, and she hadn't made a plan to be enrolled anywhere on January 3rd. So she's continued on with Southern New Hampshire University, which right now is online, and it's great. It's accredited, it does affiliate with EF, and it's allowed her to continue what she was doing while being at home across the country while she is applying to other universities. She decided, at least, her direction with education, she's majoring in human resources. And that was something she discovered. It's not a career that she knew about prior to going. And when she saw, people think, oh, they do paperwork and they do hiring and firing. And she really learned that this is a really broad reaching and important role. Any business that has employees needs human resources. And she saw how that could help her to be in her zone of genius. She's such a natural mediator, so good at communication, natural leader, very fair, always wants everyone to be treated fairly. So it helped her to discover a career path that she didn't even know existed before.
I think it's a cool thing to speak about as well, because if you were to Google the average amount of years it takes to an American student to finish an undergraduate degree, it's actually 7.5 years, which I think is pretty absurd to think about. It's just a testament as well to potentially the amount of pressure that you put on 17, 18-year-olds to just decide a major and what they want to study and where they want to go and pursue something ultimately for the rest of their life. And we all know every single day we're trying to figure out what we want to do with our life, which I think is an interesting note. And I think that's also really reassuring to a lot of the families and students here in the audience. And that note, I maybe we'll save some time for everyone's Wednesday evening. Maybe Jennifer, we can start with you with the last question, and Kelley, move on to you in terms of like any tips, advice, insight that you would give to everyone in the audience who are contemplating potentially doing a gap year.
Yeah, every family is different. It's a big step. And if you found this program and it's feeling right for you, I would just encourage you to continue reaching out and gathering more information, because I knew it would be probably a good idea that we did it. And it turned out so much more than I even knew. I knew it would be a great adventure, but again, the transformation that she went through. So I would just encourage you to continue reaching out to the staff at EF and, gathering more information and seeing how you can make it work, because those things that call to us, those things that nudge us forward, whether it's your child leading this conversation or you leading this conversation, it's a very special program, and there aren't many things that really give such depth and breadth of a whole world education. That was a conversation I had with my husband. Is our oldest is in university as well. He graduated last year. And there's the academia, which you can kind of get in different ways at any time. But these other whole self educational experiences, there's nothing else like it. So if that feels right to you, I would just encourage you to follow that nudge.
Love that, Jennifer. Thank you. And Kelley, maybe you can also end with some insider advice that you would give to the families here.
Oh, I think Jennifer just hit it right on the head. Just keep talking. Keep reaching out. If it's something that your child or you are interested in, it's such a, just keep asking questions, keep looking into it. I think it's changed Wes's life, and he is so grateful for that he found it and that he's continued to be there, and he's grown more than in this 2-year process, 1-year process than some of my children have grown in 4 years with everything they've gone through. He knows more about himself than sometimes my 28-year-old one does. But I think just keep asking questions, keep having a conversation. If you don't want to do a year, there's a month, there's so many different options out there. Just keep talking, for sure.
Love that, Kelley. Thank you. And with that note, just to reiterate, your gap year consultant who potentially invited you here will be following up afterwards to provide more details on any of the programs that I mentioned and providing more insight into the ones that we think could be potentially. Kelley, Jennifer, thank you so much just sharing your wisdom and experience, with all of us here tonight. And I am so excited to continue the conversation with everyone else here. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your Wednesday evening. Thank you all.
John,
Thank
John,
you.
can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
Someone in the chat asked if this is recorded. Was this recorded?
Yes, the recording is going to automatically send to every single one as soon as I press the finish button.
Super. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And with that said, I hope everyone has a great rest of their Wednesday and talk with you very soon.